Do you guys remember headlines like these? We were warned for 4 years that Donald Trump was an authoritarian president. Back in 2018, 2 political scientists at Harvard even made up criteria to prove he was authoritarian. I say we go back and visit that criteria and see how it fares today for Joe Biden and the Democrats. Newsweek published an article about these 2 Ivy League scientists, and there are 4 warning signs that indicate if someone poses a dangerous authoritarian risk to a nation. The article was titled, "Trump Meets Every Criteria for an Authoritarian Leader," Harvard political scientists warn. The first warning sign is rejecting or showing weak commitment to democratic rules. Now, that's some foreshadowing, isn't it? Leading up to the 2020 election, and in a couple of cases just a few days before, Democrat governors and secretaries of state around the country unilaterally changed democratically enacted election rules. That fits the first warning sign perfectly. The second warning sign is denying legitimacy of political opponents. That's exactly what Democrats did for 4 years. They called President Trump illegitimate.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president.
I had Facebook friends who couldn't even type the words President Trump. They would just write president with an asterisk or refer to him only as 45. The third warning sign is encouraging or tolerating violence. That didn't age well, did it? The 2020 summer of chaos saw dozens killed in hundreds of riots around the country, with thousands of police officers being injured and billions of dollars worth of property being damaged. And Democrats raised money to bail the rioters out of jail. Even Biden's staffers contributed. They weren't just tolerating violence, they were supporting it. And finally, the 2 Harvard scientists said that the fourth sign that a leader is becoming an authoritarian threat to the nation is a readiness to stifle or limit civil liberties of opponents, including media. Again, that too did not age well. While it's true that President Trump called out CNN for spreading false news, did they forget that Obama did the same thing to Fox News? His administration called them illegitimate. And now the Biden administration is actually telling social media platforms what information they should censor. It turns out that Joe Biden and the Democrats fit this criteria perfectly. Newsweek should run a correction. With a new picture, I might add. Democrats have always been the party of projection. Whatever it is they accuse you of, you can guarantee they're already doing it. It was Democrat politicians who unilaterally changed democratically enacted voting laws in 2020. It was Democrats who claimed Trump was an illegitimate president. It was Democrats who supported violence all across the country, and now it's Joe Biden who's trying to limit our civil liberties. And it's more than just censoring speech. Check out what Biden had to say the other day when asked about vaccine mandates.
It's still a question whether the federal government can mandate the whole country. I don't know that yet.
That sounds a lot like an authoritarian way of thinking, doesn't it? One man believing that he should be allowed to force 330 million of us to take a vaccine is about as authoritarian as it gets. I mean, if he could do that, why couldn't he take away our guns? Or take away our voice? Why couldn't he decide which foods we're allowed to eat? After all, 300,000 people die every year from obesity in America. Now I realize that some of you will say that's not a fair comparison because obesity is not a transmissible disease. That's true. But what we found out recently is that being vaccinated does not stop you from getting COVID or transmitting it. So those who choose not to vaccinate are really only putting themselves at risk. Yesterday on CNN's State of the Union show with Jake Tapper, the NIH director, Dr. Francis Collins, gave his approval for private companies mandating vaccines for employees and customers. So if President Biden can't force us all to roll up our sleeves, they'll pressure companies to do their dirty work for them. It's the same thing we saw with the White House putting pressure on social media websites to censor speech they don't like. By the way, have you ever seen a social media post that was censored or fact-checked because it contained false information about Donald Trump? I haven't either. And I'm friends with people on Facebook who've been trying to get those kinds of posts flagged. The fact of the matter is, a federal vaccine mandate instituted by the president would be the ultimate assault on our civil liberties. For the proponents of vaccine mandates, they used the Jacobson versus Massachusetts Supreme Court decision from 1905 to justify that it's lawful. What happened back then was a smallpox outbreak in the city of Cambridge, so they made a city ordinance that everyone had to get a smallpox vaccine or pay a fine. The Supreme Court ruled that it was constitutional because states have the authority to enact reasonable regulations as necessary to protect public health, public safety, and the common good. Okay, two things. First off, this was a local ordinance that also gave the option of a fine. And number two, it was smallpox, a disease that has a 30% case fatality rate, a disease that doesn't just result in death for people with comorbidities. It kills healthy babies 40 to 50% of the time. If we had a smallpox outbreak, you wouldn't need the government to mandate anything. With pictures and videos of something that horrific going around, you'd have people lining up to get vaccinated ASAP. Look, the party of projection and their media cohorts want you to believe that the last president that cut taxes and red tape was authoritarian, while the new one who wants to force a shot in your arm and censor what you can post on social media is a liberty-loving liberal who's only concerned for your well-being. I don't believe that for a second, and you shouldn't either. And if these two political scientists from Harvard were doing more than just trying to hurt Donald Trump politically, they'd use that same criteria on Joe Biden like I did. And they'd find that it's Biden and the Democrats who pose a dangerous authoritarian risk to this nation. And that's the simple truth. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you all would like to support this channel, check out the links in the description, and let's keep putting some common sense back into the great debate.